What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does, because the government is big, the government's bad, and the government doesn't like oversight whatsoever, right? Like, especially the Biden administration. These people are running rogue, and they don't care about the norms of this country. They don't care about the people. They don't care about Congress. They just want to do what the hell they want to do, and they could care less about judicial standards, about guidance, about the Supreme Court. They could care less about all this because, right, the Supreme Court has struck down many of the Biden administration's rules and all this BS that they're doing, and they do it anyway. And it's just outright insanity. And this story, this is an update story, by the way, to a previous story that we done on the DOJ and the Biden administration.
I didn't realize the Department of Justice actually determines what is legitimate and not legitimate for the House Oversight Committee to investigate. Is this shocking to you as well?
It's shocking to me that he would say something publicly like that.
Yeah.
When we all know the answer to that. You know, the Department of Justice doesn't get to dictate congressional oversight. There's supposed to be checks and balances in our system. And what we have, as you know, is a two-tier system of justice. We have an attorney general who is entitled. He represents a president who's under major investigation for public corruption. Part of that investigation of public corruption involves mishandling of classified documents. Our committee's the one that discovered that the timeline that Joe Biden testified to Robert Hur and the timeline that the White House put out about the discovery of Joe Biden's classified documents isn't consistent. So we have a lot of questions about this because we've proven that the family was influence peddling. We believe that some of those classified documents that Joe Biden mishandled, that were in his possession, strode in various locations all across the East Coast, may have been part of the influence peddling schemes that his family was involved in. And we need all of that evidence, including the audio tapes, to be able to complete our investigation.
Do you, Congressman, proceed trying to hold the Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt?
Well, I would love to. That'll be a decision that House leadership will make. But I think it's pretty clear that if he doesn't comply with our reasonable request, with our subpoenas, then I think he should be held in contempt. And hopefully we will see our House unified in doing that. We've got to provide some accountability to this administration. This administration's out of control. And when you look at the Department of Justice and how they operate, and they operate above the law, and they go after their political opposition.
And it's like they can't be bothered whatsoever with oversight, right? Like James Comer and Jim Jordan have been trying and trying and trying to get the unredacted audio files from the DOJ, right? Like that goes toward their impeachment investigation that they can't finish until they get all this audio stuff, right? Like the DOJ wants to know why, right? Like, no, you don't get to question why oversight exists, right? Like the unmitigated gall of the DOJ to dictate oversight to the overseers is outright BS, in my opinion. Like I said, they're running rogue, and they could care less about me or you or anybody else. Look what they're doing to the damn country. They are burning this country to the ground, and it is really not funny, and I am not liking it whatsoever. Check this out. DOJ rebuffs GOP's second demand for Biden-Hur audio recordings. Just outright insanity. We've already went over this once, right? Like they already denied it. Said, oh no, we gave you that information. We've been extraordinarily transparent, right? Giving them redacted audio, redacted transcripts. Everything was redacted. And then saying at the same time, oh yeah, we've been transparent. No, you haven't been transparent. Is a redacted transcript transparency? No, it's not. You're covering stuff up. That is not transparent, by the way, but the Biden administration really doesn't care, and it really pisses me off because the government, the Congress is supposed to have oversight over all these things. That is the purpose of checks and balances, right? Without balances or without checks, you don't have balance, and your government can't function like it's supposed to, right? That's why we have three branches, for God's sakes. We have a people's house that is supposed to have the people, the citizens, are supposed to be in charge of that body, right? And that body is supposed to be in charge of the executive branch that is supposed to be in charge of the legislation from the people's body, right? So it's a circle. It's circular oversight, essentially, right? Like, we know Congress makes the laws, the executive branch enforces those laws, and the Supreme Court adjudicates between the two, figuring out, no, you can't pass this law, right? Like, if it goes against the Constitution. So, if one of these branches is just giving the middle finger to the others and saying, screw you, then what system of checks and balances do we even have anymore? Right? Once again, like I said, destroying our country, destroying the norms of the judicial system, destroying the norms of the executive branch, destroying the norms of everyday life, right? Like, you know, try to say, oh yeah, the country's doing great to some of these people in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, and San Diego, and California, by the way, because they're experiencing migrant influxes really crazy right now. It's like shifted ever since Texas has sent the Texas National Guard out there and has tried to stop some of the criminal aliens from coming across the country. They have shifted. They're moving around Texas now, right? Like, it's slowed way down in Texas. But so that means the people haven't stopped coming. No, the people certainly haven't stopped coming. They're just going other places now, right? Like, just doing an end run around Texas, essentially. But these people, they just don't care about anybody, and it just really aggravates the shit out of me. Let's get into it, though. The Justice Department on Thursday, for a second time, declined to turn over audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur, rejecting claims from GOP impeachment investigators that the recordings contain information that would help them with their probe. The letter renews the specter of possible contempt proceedings for Attorney General Merrick Garland. House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan had floated this as a possible response if the audio files were not delivered yesterday. Our cooperation has been extraordinary. The committees have not responded in kind. What? They don't have to respond in kind, by the way, right? Like, they request information, you give them information, right? What response do you need from oversight, right? Like, if your manager comes and tells you something, you don't have to force him to respond to you. You need to tell him what you did. That's how oversight works. They don't have to tell you why they want this information because they are in charge, not you. Blows my mind the unmitigated gall of these people to just brush off oversight and say, nah. It seems that the more information you receive, the less satisfied you are and the less justification you have for contempt. The more you rush toward it. Carlos Uriarte, head of legislative affairs for the Justice Department, wrote in a letter to Jordan and House Oversight Accountability Chair James Comer. The committee's inability to identify a need for these audio files grounded in legislative or impeachment purposes raises concerns about what other purposes they might serve, he said, noting that the Justice Department has previously questioned whether they were being requested for political purposes. And like that guy said in that video, the people being overseen don't get to dictate what the overseer can see, right? Like, if they want to see some information, you give them that information. They have the security clearance to look at all this stuff. So there is no reason whatsoever that they should deny the request from oversight, right? Like, that's the oversight committee of Congress. He said, noting that the Justice Department has previously questioned whether they were being requested for political purposes. This concern has only deepened with the committee's failure to identify a legitimate purpose that would be served by production of these files, Uriarte added. There is no legitimate purpose. They just want it, and you're supposed to give it to them. The panels already have a transcript of Biden's interview, a redacted transcript with her, which reviewed how classified documents from his time as vice president ended up at his home and other office. Her's report was critical of Biden, but it determined there was not enough evidence to show he violated the law. That is not true. That is the corporate press lying to you. No, they had the smoking gun. He had all the evidence. He showed intent. He showed motivation. He showed all the evidence that Biden knew he shouldn't have these classified documents. He shared them with his ghostwriter, knowing he wasn't supposed to do that. And he decided that Joe Biden's memory was too bad. He would be sympathetic to a jury, and he didn't believe that a jury would actually convict Joe Biden on this matter. That's why he didn't proceed with the prosecution. It wasn't because he didn't have the evidence. See, once again, the corporate press lying to the American people, right? Like just walking hand in hand with the Biden administration, just propping up this egregious lack of transparency, just brushing off oversight, just telling them basically to screw off. If you can't tell me why, you don't have to I'm sorry, man. This just aggravates me till no end. The Justice Department argued that sharing the recordings could make law enforcement's job more difficult. How? They don't explain how. And that witnesses might be hesitant to cooperate if recordings of their interviews were turned over to Congress. Huh? They're not asking for other interviews with other people. I don't know if that's something that you already said or if that's the corporate press just throwing their BS in there. But what the hell does other audio recordings have to do with Robert Her's audio recording with Joe Biden? Has nothing to do with that. Nobody else was in the audio recording, correct? Right? Like it was Robert Hur interviewing Joe Biden. So what the hell are they talking about here, right? Let's read that again. The Justice Department argued that sharing the recordings could make law enforcement's job more difficult. How? And that witnesses might be hesitant to cooperate if recordings of their interviews were turned over to Congress. What witnesses? Makes no sense whatsoever. These people, dude, I swear to God, I really hope when Trump gets back into office, he throws all of these people in jail. Robert Hur, Merrick Garland, Joe, I know you can't just do that. I understand that, but, these people need to be held to account for just telling oversight to screw themselves, basically, and just doing whatever the hell they want to. It's like we do not have oversight currently, essentially. It's because they can do whatever the hell they want to do. If they don't want to turn over some documents, we're just not going to turn over those documents. You haven't given us a good enough reason. Your reasoning doesn't suffice. It's like, no, they don't need to have reasoning. That's oversight, for crying out loud. Comer and Jordan last week wrote that their impeachment inquiry will suffer without these audio recordings. Your response to these subpoenas remains inadequate, suggesting that you are withholding records for partisan purposes and to avoid political embarrassment for President Biden, they wrote. The duo said there is greater insight to be gained from audio recordings, a unique and invaluable medium of information that capture vocal tone, pace, inflections, verbal nuance, and other idiosyncrasies. Transcription is incapable of recording these revealing verbal cues, they wrote. For instance, a subject's pauses and inflections can provide context or evidence of whether a subject is evasive or suffers from a poor memory. Ha, good one. Much of the Justice Department's rebuffing of the committee's request is an indictment of their impeachment investigation overall. Huh? In seeking the audio recordings, the two chairs suggested that Biden's interview with her could somehow be revealing for the impeachment inquiry, suggesting without evidence that some of the documents in question could relate to the review of his family's business dealings. Yeah, and they don't know if it does or not because you haven't given them the audio recordings, the unredacted audio recordings, right? So, yeah, and that's something I postulated on, I guess you could say, in the last video, like, why are they so hesitant, right? Like, is it something in these audio recordings that is so damaging to Joe Biden that they are willing to destroy oversight, essentially, to keep them from learning of this information? Or is it just that these people are so dadgum arrogant that they could care less about the people of this country, right? Like the oversight of this country, Congress, they could care less about that. You know, which one is it? Because both of them are an indictment of just how poor this administration is and just how rogue this administration is. Yeah, I call them a rogue administration all the time. And because that's what they are, right? Like defying Congress, defying oversight, defying the Supreme Court. It's like they could just care less about anything and everything. They're operating like a damn dictatorial regime, a dictatorial government. They just do and say whatever they want. They go on and arrest innocent protesters, peaceful protesters, right, from January 6th. There's been 1,300 people arrested tied to January 6th? Now, we know 1,300 people weren't fighting with cops and didn't storm inside the Capitol. That would make no sense, right? Just think about that for a second, if you will. 1,300 freaking people inside the Capitol building. Yeah, right. So we know for a fact that some of those arrests had to be peaceful protesters. That, you know, statistically, they have to be peaceful protesters. So don't let the corporate press lie to you and give you their narrative about January 6th was the worst thing since Pearl Harbor, because that is infuriating. Nothing in the interview transcripts the department has already produced speaks to or supports the committee's speculation on this point, and nothing in the audio file of the same conversations would do so either. Nothing in Special Counsel's Hur's report or his testimony indicates any support for this speculation either, the DOJ wrote. And you know what? None of that matters. None of that matters whatsoever. GOP investigators also similarly suggested the materials might somehow shed light on their search for evidence Biden may have accepted a bribe, right? And they'll never know that unless you turn over the evidence, right? Like if Joe Biden is so innocent, if there's nothing damaging in that audio recording, why not turn it over? The committees have offered no explanation why the audio of interviews, for which the department has already produced transcripts, would address these questions you already stated, right? But hang on, we know that those transcripts were redacted. The DOJ noted that it also has arranged for congressional investigators to review 2 Ukraine-related documents that were among the files found at Biden's home, but that Comer has not taken advantage of the offer. Right? Like, who cares? That's not what they're overlooking right now, right? Like, that's not what they're asking for. It's like he's dangling a piece of cheese or something in front of them. Like, hey, come look at this and not this, right? Giving more credence to the fact that they're trying to hide something here. It definitely looks like they're just trying to hide something. If you're going to say, hey, we got this. Hey, this deals with Ukraine. You want to come look at this? Instead of giving them what they want? Oh yeah, they're definitely trying to hide something. The chair of the Oversight Committee has not yet taken us up on our offer, which we made over 2 months ago. Nonetheless, he has been publicly speculating, inaccurately, about their contents, you already said. Yeah, because you haven't given him the contents, so what else is he supposed to do but speculate? You're not complying with oversight. As a matter of fact, I do believe that's against the law. But, you know, I could be wrong about that. I don't know the U.S. code all that well, you know, to figure out. I might go look that up and put me a little note right here or something. If that is law that you do have to comply with oversight, then you should be seeing that on your screen right now. If not, I just look like a complete idiot pointing and talking about absolutely nothing. But I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Like, I mean, does this piss you guys off that the Biden administration is just brushing off oversight, you know, defying the Supreme Court? Yeah, we're going to pay off student loans and we're going to, you know, do this and do that. Just, does that aggravate you guys? Like, is this not the most rogue administration in United States history? Sorry, sometimes I have trouble talking. And right, you would think having trouble talking, well, why the hell do you do that on YouTube so much, man? But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's all I got for this one, you guys. I want to thank everybody for watching. I sure do appreciate it. And y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.